What's up, Rebel fans? We're back with another episode of the Rebel Talk presented by the Rebel Walk. I'm Ken Wicker, and as always, I'm here with.
Zach Moreth.
And today we're going to talk a little bit about some football we just saw today. Obviously, the women's hoops, the bracket came out earlier this week or on Sunday. We'll talk about that. They play Marquette this coming up weekend. And then we'll talk about baseball, who's actually playing right now. I believe they have the lead 4-3. But that'll be later on. And so right off the bat, we're just going to jump into some football. And we saw some spring practice today for the first time since they came back from spring break. They were able to have media viewing today for the first time. And obviously the big thing was seeing these quarterbacks, seeing this new look offensive line, seeing the D line, just the defense as a whole, really just getting out there and seeing the players really. And I really like what I saw today. A lot of guys that look bigger in person, obviously, and a lot of guys that looked as good as advertised. Anything you wanted to touch on today, Zach, as far as the interviews after practice or before or during practice?
Yeah, so I mean, before we even get going, Cam, I do just want to acknowledge I'm reporting live from Stockard Hall. So if there's any connection or any sort of interference, that will be the reason for that. But yeah, just like you said, I wasn't able to be that at practice, but I did see some of the videos that you took. The defensive line looks electric. I do think we need to acknowledge that Suntory Perkins was working in with that group. We saw him as an edge rusher last year at times, but if he can put on some weight, there's no reason he really can't play that role. He has the speed and for sure the physicality. I was also impressed with Princely Umanmielen and Walter Nolen. We saw the drill they were doing, something that Randall Joyner cooked up, but it looked awesome and they look fast and they look really filled out as human beings. So I'm excited to see them and just the type of physicality and what they bring to this defensive line, Cam.
Absolutely, and yeah, just on that defensive line, just like you said, and during those drills, a lot of people like to see that. We posted those on Twitter on X after the practice was over, and really just that was what everyone was kind of anticipating, wanted to see Walter Nolen, those videos of him, and just see him up close. Us media members wanted to see him up close out there.
Right.
Obviously, we didn't get to see anybody in a starting role or anything like that. No, really, first team or first team defense or offense was showed to us during those times. But obviously, you're going to see Walter Nolen guys like Walter Nolen in the starting lineup in the future. As far as the O line, I remember I walked over to the O line group. That was one of the first groups I ended up walking by when I walked through the door. And Diego Pounds is, I believe he's listed at like 6'6", 330. He looks bigger than that, man. He looks bigger than that. And that's probably going to be your starting left tackle. So obviously that's good to have, especially with a guy like Dart at quarterback. And then obviously that's a position group to look out for as the spring goes on. Really, offensive line added a lot of new pieces. The two guys from Washington, Pounds and Jaquan Scott. So really, and with the
Yeah.
guys coming back last year with Caleb Warren, Reese McIntyre, Jeremy James. So it's just going to be a position you're going to have to watch out for. Maybe some rotations. Jaden Williams also in there. Micah Pettis when he gets completely healthy. So really, just
Oh, yeah.
excited to look out for that position group as a whole. Tight ends. Priest Corn was the only tight end really I seen today that did not wear a black jersey. Black jerseys, if you don't know, if you haven't followed here, spring in the past, black jerseys means no contact. That's really just year round for the football team. If they're wearing a black jersey, it means they're either nursing an injury or just no contact in drills that week. This week it was Caleb Warren, Diego Pounds, Wolf Wright, Hip, Aiden Williams, and Jeffrey Rush. Wolf, Wright, and Hip, obviously those three tight ends that were in that. I believe Javante Connor maybe was the other tight
Yeah.
end from last year's roster. I don't think he was in a black jersey today. I think he was out there
Yeah.
with Priest Corn, but they seem to be the only two that weren't in non-contact. That's really all for the offense. Obviously, the running back situation, not much on Diggs. I believe Coach. Do you remember what Coach said exactly on Diggs?
Yeah, he basically just clarified that he had surgery on his knee, so we can assume that he did, in fact, tear his ACL in early January.
Exactly. And then obviously Riscano was the only guy that Riscano was the only scholarship back out there. I don't think
Right.
Matt Jones was out there, but I'm not sure if he's a scholarship back off the top of my head. And obviously, Dew Bentley wasn't out there today, kind of still nursing just some injuries from late in the season last year. I believe got banged up in that Egg Bowl a little bit too. Going back to the defensive side for football, Zach, really just the linebacker. We talked about this, I believe, in the last podcast.
Yeah.
Dudley and Perkins really running with the D line and running off with those edge rusher drills instead of being over there with the linebackers. Do you like what you see when you see that, Zach?
Yeah, I sort of, I explained what I saw out of Perkins. His physicality and his speed coming off the edge is going to be fantastic. But, I think he can play anywhere. I think if he really wanted to, he could play safety, to be honest with you. Dudley, we saw him on the edge in the Penn State game. He was fantastic. He's physical. He's built for that position. He's also going to be a fantastic linebacker, wherever Pete Golding, kind of decides to put him, Cam. But I just wanted to get your thoughts on what you saw in the secondary, because as we know, there are a lot of new moving parts in that part of the field right now.
Yeah, obviously the secondary. I'm really excited about this secondary. Honestly, I think I've kind of harped on it maybe in previous episodes. Yam Banks, I'm really excited about seeing Yam Banks out there. Really didn't see much of them do, I guess, contact or against receivers from our viewings today in practice. But really, I guess in the future, I'll be looking. Well, that's what I'll be looking for when I'm in these practices, is trying to see if I can find some of the receiver matchups with these corners and safeties. But obviously, Yam Banks was out there today. Key Lawrence was out there today. Lewis Moore was out there today. Chris Graves, returning corner, he was out there with Trey Amos. I seen some pictures maybe from the gallery taken from that practice. Trey Amos was guarding guys like Caden Lee and Trey Harris, along with Brandon Turnage, also guarding guys like Trey Harris in a couple of those pictures. And it looked like even TJ Dudley was out in coverage in a couple of those pictures. I remember seeing a couple of pictures where he had the ball in his hand. Maybe he got a pick in practice today or something. So,
Maybe.
I mean, if TJ Dudley's a guy that can be out in space like that, obviously throw him out there. He's a freak athlete. But
Sure.
yeah, the DB room obviously is going to be very stacked, probably one of the more, I guess, really led well rooms with Trey Washington and John Sanders Jr. And we know Trey Washington's kind of a leader on that defense as a whole, but really just excited to see what John Sanders Jr. is going to do. Quiet guy, if you've talked to him in the media, doesn't really talk a lot, just kind of straight to his game, but really excited to see what he does in that leader role this year.
100%. And just adding off of that, Trey Washington, I mean, they posted a couple of pictures of this guy. He looks NFL ready, to be honest with you. His body is in peak shape. I think he led the team in tackles last year. If not, he was 1, 2, or 3. Absolute beast in the run game. I don't want to draw a direct comparison, but he does remind me of Jordan Battle from Alabama, just a freak. The team's going to run the ball. You stuff Washington in there, put him in the box. He's going to get a tackle. He's also good in coverage. So, I'm excited for him to lead that room. I do want to talk about one more thing, football related from practice at least. Henry Parrish could be joining the field soon for the Rebs, Cam. He entered the transfer portal out of Miami, and he worked with Kevin Smith there. And when he transferred from Ole Miss, as we know, Kevin Smith is now back in Oxford. So I think that's an interesting situation.
Yeah, I think really there's probably 2 positions that Ole Miss might go shopping for in the portal, in the next portal cycle. It's probably going to be linebacker and running back specifically, really just because the depth in that room, really the scholarship, not really a lot of backs on scholarship. And then with Diggs and Bentley nursing injuries, you want to go get somebody. I think Henry Parrish would be great. I really liked him here when he was a freshman.
Right.
He was on that Nat Corral Sugar Bowl year. That was where he was behind Snoop Conner and Jaron Ely. And I believe he had a solid year that year. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know if you know or anything, but I know probably about like 400 or 500 yards rushing that year for the kid.
Sure.
That's pretty solid for a freshman year, but sitting behind 2 solid backs who Snoop Conner was drafted into the NFL, and Ely bounced around some practice teams. I believe he still might be on one. But yeah, that's a position that Ole Miss is going to look forward to getting in the next portal cycle, and Henry Parrish is obviously going to be there. Obviously, there was some recruits at practice today. If you want to, recruits coming to practice this week and today. If you want to talk about those, Zach.
Yeah, absolutely. So you said it. Quite a few recruits were in town today. Just want to highlight some of the most important ones, or the highest touted ones, you could say, I guess. And that starts with Jacoby Hobson Jr. He's a 4-star of the 2025 class. He plays linebacker and safety. He kind of reminds me of Perkins. He brings speed, he brings physicality, and just an overall fantastic defender. His brother, Jar Norris, is committed to Ole Miss as a wide receiver out of Northwest Community College. Julius Holly, another 2025 prospect, was in town. He's a four-star from Georgia. He's an edge rusher, big body, 6'5", 220 pounds. Interest from Georgia, Stanford, Tennessee. So it's good that Randall Joyner is able to get there, get him on campus, and we can kind of see what goes on from this point moving forward. Andrew Maddox will be in town tomorrow. His brother AJ is a freshman quarterback for Ole Miss. We know that. His dad, I believe he might have played with Pete Golding. I know there's some connection there, but he's a huge defensive lineman. He's 6'4", 280. Guy can do it all. I watched him play live, and he's one hell of an athlete, I can tell you that. One of the more underrated prospects in town was Braylon Womack. He's out of the 2026 class, but he's a top 100 recruit. He's a cornerback, and he goes to Hartfield Academy, which is just outside of Jackson. He's 6 feet, 195 pounds, and despite being in the 26 class, he's already drawing interest from Alabama, Arkansas, Florida, Georgia, all those big SEC schools, Cam.
Yeah, and going back to Hobson, I know you said you said he kind of reminds you of Perkins. I remember seeing him the day when he walked into the facility. He does kind of have that Perkins type build, that safety hybrid linebacker type build. So that'll be interesting. And then obviously Andrew Maddox really having his brother on the team. I'd love to see him come here and join his brother on there as well. Obviously, we're gonna end football right there. We're gonna hop into some women's hoops. But before that, just take a moment to look at the sponsors on the bottom of the screen. Obviously, you can check out these sponsors on the Rebel Walk website. One Stop Shop Embroidery at Phoenix Embroidery Company, and obviously Brown Insurance Agency. Got insurance from life insurance, auto insurance, health insurance, you name it. Obviously, you can check all these out on the rebelwalk.com. Hopping into some women's hoops. So we have the women's tourney. Selection Sunday was this past Sunday. Obviously, we thought Ole Miss was going to be 6, 7, 8 seed. They got the 7 seed against Marquette. That's going to be at 3:45 p.m. this Saturday. And I know there's not a lot of betting odds for women's hoops, but there is when the tourney rolls around. And Ole Miss is a 5.5-point favorite for this. Marquette's a really solid ball club. They started the season 12-0. They beat a ranked Illinois. They beat a ranked Creighton. Their first loss was at UConn. And most of their, I think, if not all of their conference, all of their losses this year were conference losses. They dropped like 2 to UConn, 2 to St. John's. And they have a really good scorer and rebounder in Liza Carlin. She's 18 points a game, 18 points a game, rebounds about 8 a game. They have 2 solid guards to back her up as well. So Ole Miss is really going to have to bring that defense that they harp on all the time. Really stop the 3-point shot. I believe Marquette's probably about like 38% from 3, which is really solid. Obviously, we've seen Ole Miss hold teams to like 15% from the 3-point line at times. So obviously that's something they're going to have to keep an eye out for when they come into this game. And I believe Ole Miss still has a lot of momentum going into this game. Obviously, you come off the loss to LSU, but really just at the end of the season there, I think they went on like the 7-game run to end the year. Really just building off of that and going into this tournament, and especially what you did last year against Stanford, and another opportunity to do that this year. I think there's really a lot to be excited for with women hoops right now, Zach.
Yeah, 100%. And if we do beat Marquette, which, obviously it's very possible, we will move on to play Notre Dame, who's the 2 seed. And on paper, the matchup looks scary, of course. It's in South Bend. It's Notre Dame, 2 seed, all this and that. But Ole Miss was in a very similar situation last season, and they got it done. They were able to advance to the Sweet 16. So don't doubt Coach Yo. Probably not the smartest thing to do, but first things first, let's handle Marquette. Like you said, Liza Carlin, very good basketball player, 18 points per game, 7 rebounds. She does it all for the Golden Eagles, and it's going to be interesting to see what goes down on Saturday.
Absolutely. And then, like you said, that if they can get through Marquette, they'll obviously have to play a team like Notre Dame. But Notre Dame has to get through Kent State, 15 seed there. We don't see a lot of those upsets in men's hoops or women's hoops. But obviously, Ole Miss will be playing one of those if they were to win that. And then, obviously, if you keep going farther into this tournament, you might have to play South Carolina again. You could also have to play Texas A&M again. And so this is teams that you're familiar with. And if you can just get through those first 2 rounds, then obviously you're playing teams that you're facing for like the 3rd, 4th, maybe at least 2nd time this year, and you have some familiarity there, and you're able to, I guess, game plan better when you're Coach Yo for these teams that you've already played a couple times earlier this year.
No, that is a great point, man. And we bring it all back to this idea that it's March and anything can happen. So we'll see.
Absolutely. And really, yeah, that's all we got for women's hoops. Obviously, keep an eye out for women's hoops in March. A lot of things going on with the men's bracket and the women's bracket, but that is this Saturday at 3:45 p.m. Ole Miss 5-point favorites. We'll see how Coach Yo and them handle that. Obviously, baseball is going on right now. I believe I'll get a little score check for us real quick
Oh, here we go.
before I hop
6-3
into
reps.
this. 6-3 reps. So they got another two spot. They got 2 spot in the 6th, 2 spot in the 7th, and it's top of the 8th right now. Mason Nichols on the mound for the Rebels against the Southern Miss Golden Eagles in Pearl at the minor league ballpark down there. Obviously, Ole Miss took the series this past weekend over South Carolina 2-1. What's your thoughts on that one, Zach?
It was awesome. I mean, if you were in Oxford, especially for that Saturday game, it was an incredible environment. I thought the fans did a great job showing out, but the most important thing is Andrew Fisher. He hit 3 bombs in one game. It was kind of just surreal watching it go down, Cam. It felt like every time like he went up, you kind of felt it as a fan that something big was coming, and then he just continued to deliver. The game was super tight heading into, I think it was the 8th inning. It was 4-3 Rebs, and then they put up an 8 spot to kind of put that one away. Friday night was a gritty win. It was super close, a lot of battling, a lot of back and forth throughout the whole game. Shout out to Gunnar Dennis, who kind of persevered through a lot of adversity and finished, I believe, did he throw 5 innings, Cam?
I believe he went 5, maybe 6. I think he went 5 for sure, though.
So that's perfect. That's what you're going to need, especially heading into Knoxville this weekend. Sunday, obviously, Grayson Saunier didn't have his best stuff. The offense wasn't producing nearly as many runs, but, you saw signs of what this team is capable of doing, and we're seeing it right now against a really good Southern Miss team who did beat Alabama. And then this weekend, again, we're going to be tested very, very heavily in Knoxville.
Yeah. Baseball for this weekend in Knoxville is going to be it's either going to be really heartbreaking for Ole Miss fans or something to be really excited for. Obviously, I believe last time this team went to Knoxville was, I think, maybe the championship year for the Rebels, and I don't think it ended well. If I recall off the top of my head, I believe it was like maybe an early series, like this early in the year series, and they went to Knoxville, and I believe they got swept. This was when Tennessee was kind of, I guess, coming back to a more powerhouse SEC baseball team. But really, same Tennessee team that we saw last year. They hit a lot of home runs, and they're solid at pitching. I believe last year they had a closer or a reliever that threw about or around 100, if not 100. I don't think they have a guy like that this year, just because really looking at their staff, they don't have a lot of swing and miss guys, a lot of big strikeout pitchers. But they're a solid pitching staff. They're about around, I think they're like 4th in the SEC in ERA right now. They don't give up a lot of runs. They don't walk a lot of people. And obviously the thing to back that up is the 54 home runs they hit this year. I think they're like one of 3 teams in the SEC to hit 50 home runs so far this year. They got, I believe, 5 guys with like 5+ home runs on their team. Blake Burke is their leadoff. Is their first baseman. He's their really probably their best hitter on the team. He's batting like 385, right. 7 bombs this year. And then Billy Amick has about 9 bombs, which is I think the same as Fisher. So those guys are about top in the SEC in home runs together. And they'll meet this weekend at Tennessee, 8th in the country. Obviously, another opportunity for the Rebels to boost their self in a ranking. I believe they were 17th in Baseball America this week. Didn't get the D1 spot, which is the one that really gets displayed everywhere. But really, if you knock off number 8 Tennessee this weekend, there's no doubt that you're ranked. I believe if you're Ole Miss fans, though, just really looking at this series from the outside looking in. Obviously you don't want to come away with just one in this series, but if you come back to Oxford on Sunday with just 1 win, you can't be really that upset. You're 3-3 in the SEC. You're coming back home against Kentucky, and we're still early in the season with a chance to turn things around.
100%, Cam. You nailed it. I completely agree with you, and I just want to point out a couple of facts here, or statistics, if you will. Tennessee, they're averaging 2.5 home runs per game, Cam. Now, they did lose the series to Alabama and Tuscaloosa last weekend, and the key for the Tide was in the 2 games they won, Tennessee had 2 or less home runs. So one of the keys for this weekend is going to be limiting those home runs. I know it's difficult in a ballpark that honestly just loves to give out home runs, it feels like, but that has to be a key for this pitching staff in Ole Miss. They have 6 hitters that are hitting over 350. They have 8 hitters with an OPS over 1,000, and also 8 hitters with at least 6 home runs or more, Cam. So, like, this is the real deal. This is going to be a very serious test, and I'm excited. I'm excited to see how this plays out, especially for a Rebel team that has been hot.
Yeah, this is a pitching staff. I believe I remember saying this on Sunday. This is a team that's going to have to keep the ball on the ground when you go to Knoxville. I think, Doyle, as great as Liam Doyle looked on Saturday, I believe the only runs he really gave up were home runs. That's something probably you're not going to be able to do in Knoxville because, you get a couple guys on base in Knoxville. Next thing you know, it's they put up 6 runs off maybe 2 home runs, 2, 3 home runs. That's something that Doyle is probably going to have to make sure that doesn't happen when he gets out there on Saturday. Dennis, really, that's the guy that's going to put the ball on the ground. You got to set the tone on Friday, put the ball on the ground, and make sure that these guys aren't getting the ball out the ballpark early in the series. And then Sonye, like you said, really not a great outing for him this past Sunday, but you had a chance to bounce back against a really good hitting team and show that you can compete at this SEC level. But really, just the bullpen for this team. Mallett and Spencer looked really clutch this past weekend. Mendez, Morrell, even Simmons, and he struggled a little bit, but they all looked really well out of the pen this weekend. I believe Braden Jones might be on the mound right now, or was on the mound earlier. He's looked really good this year. Mason Nichols has looked really good this year. The bullpen as a whole just seems like it's deeper than it's ever been at Ole Miss, and that's something that you really have to be excited for, knowing that you have guys like Liam Doyle and Gunnar Dennis who can get you 5 to 6 innings. Even Riley Maddox tonight got him 6 innings.
Yeah.
But you also have these relievers that can go 3+ innings or give you a really good 1 inning like Connor Spencer.
Right. Tennessee has 5. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
All right. Tennessee has 5 players who have hit at least 6 home runs. That's my bad.
Wow.
But I also do want to expand on the bullpen from this past weekend against South Carolina. They didn't allow a single run on Sunday or Saturday, and they only allowed 1 run on Friday, Cam.
Wow. So, yeah, obviously more to look into for baseball. They'll be playing Tennessee this weekend in Knoxville. Before we go, wanted to acknowledge one other thing in Ole Miss sports. Ole Miss softball took down number 2 LSU this weekend 2-1 in their series in Baton Rouge. I've been seeing a lot about Ole Miss versus not to take away from Ole Miss softball, but saying Ole Miss versus LSU is just kind of getting really heated in every sport. And people are kind of making the joke as Ole Miss is starting to beat LSU a little bit more often than usual, and that's obviously going to make things a lot more exciting in other sports too. But Ole Miss softball did take down number 2 LSU this past weekend. They were undefeated. LSU was going into that series.
That's awesome.
Ole Miss handed them their first 2 losses in Baton Rouge on their home turf. Ole Miss is 20-8 right now. The Ole Miss softball team 3-3 in the SEC. I believe they finished the series against State the week prior with a walk-off home run to win that game. They did lose the series, but that was a walk-off. I guess to kind of build some momentum going into the LSU series.
100%.
This is a team that probably might be ranked soon if they keep playing the way they do. And just wanted to make sure that Ole Miss fans are watching out for this team. They play UGA this weekend in Oxford. That's Georgia. They play them in Oxford this weekend on Friday at 6 p.m., Saturday at 3 p.m., Sunday at 1 p.m. So obviously no baseball in Oxford this weekend, no basketball. If you have a chance, you can go watch some Ole Miss softball at their stadium that's kind of getting renovated right now. Obviously, be some more stadium seats in the future, but right now still getting some renovations done. But yeah, they're a really solid team right now, and I believe they'll be ranked pretty soon. And obviously, Ole Miss fans should keep an eye out for them for sure.
No, they deserve it, Cam. That was awesome. To tune into that, to Ole Miss softball and to see that going on, especially in Baton Rouge, it just made things a lot sweeter.
Absolutely. Anything else you got to add, Zach?
That's all I got, man.
And that's all we got for you guys today. Make sure to tune into therebelwalk.com for all your Ole Miss sports needs.